Welcome everyone to the Carnegie Historical Museum and our Heritage Farms segment. Tonight we have the Angstead family. We thank all of you for showing up tonight. It's a great thing we can do for the community by having this little thing and learning more about Jefferson County farmers and their farms. We would like to introduce from my right, and we'll introduce the family, and then we'll start with the history of the farm.
I'm Julaine Angstead Fritz, and I was the youngest of the family.
Mary Angstead Larson. And I was the middle child. We had a sister between us that has passed. Her name was Christy.
And I'm Ken, the youngest son. We have an older brother, lives down in Bella Vista, Arkansas. He couldn't make it this evening.
I'm Larry Angstead, his son, that own the farm now with my wife, so.
All right, well, if Kenny, if you could go through the history of the Century Farm. I know it dates back to 1800s, or the part of it, the original part that we can find history on.
And all of this information is upstairs with the display in a real nice album that my wife Patsy put a lot of time into, discovered and everything. So if you get time to go up and see that, there's a lot of information in that album.
Yep, and
And
that's
this
on,
information's in there.
yep, and that's on the third floor of our Carnegie Museum, which everybody's invited to go look and see after the presentation.
Okay, I'm just gonna kind of read this. It has a legal description of southeast quarter of the northeast quarter of section 72, range 10 of Center Township of Jefferson County, Iowa, and of interest to almost everybody in the room. It is right on the south edge of Vedic City. So our north border is Vedic City's south border. So the first owner that we could find homesteaded this ground in 1844. So that's the first legal ownership of the ground when it was homesteaded in 1844. That was a guy by the name of James Ely, no relation to our family. And then the second owner was deeded to Hugh and Isabel McCoon by Ely in 1854, which was 10 years later. And then the third owner, it was deeded to an Aaron and Rachel Matson Booth by McCoon in 1865. Kind of interest there, this is the Booth family, but it went back out to another family, and how it got to us was through the Kuntz family, which my grandmother was a Kuntz. So it was actually in our family twice. But then the land was split. Those first three was 80 acres, then the land was split into two 40-acre plots at this time, and it was deeded to Isaac and Susanna Booth by Aaron and Rachel Booth in 1866. That'd be the third great-grandparents of Larry. And the fifth owner was deeded to John and Calvin, Virginia Douglas Kuntz by Isaac and Susanna Booth, which would be the second great-grandparents of Larry. The sixth owner deeded to Robert Frank and Mary Sophia Kuntz Booth. Mary was my grandmother, or Larry's great-grandmother. And that was in 1911. The sixth owner was my grandfather, Robert Frank Booth, and Mary Sophia Booth, and that was in 1927. Well, little did they know, like things happen in life, Grandpa died of a heart attack 5 years later in 1932. But my grandmother and her four children, which was my mother and my aunts and uncles, held on to it and split it up just between them and held on to it through all of these years. And then the eighth owner is when they actually settled the estate of Grandpa and deeded it to my grandmother and the four children, which was Mary Sophia, John Carl, William Henry, and Margaret Maxine, and Marie Louise Wilson. Some of you may have known Marie Wilson or Marie Miller in her later life. The ninth owner is when they deeded 1/2 interest to my mother, Margaret Maxine, and my aunt, Marie Louise. In other words, two sisters got this 40 acres. Well, they didn't really think about it at the time, but those girls got older and got married, and they decided that one of them needed to have it for a home, and that someone else was going to have to do something different. So that, and then there's a story in that book about that too. The 10th odor was deeded to Larry and Paula in 1996, and that's the present owners at this time.
Nice, thank you for that.
Are you done?
Yeah, you can go home now. We do have up in the display that, and you said you might have information on that. There was a high card drawn.
Can we go into that story?
Just a little bit, explain that, how
I don't know
that.
how I can do that a little bit. Well, as I said, this ground was deeded to my aunt and my mother. I'm not sure I can remember what the date was on that, but then they just, not long after that, both of them got married, and they decided one of them wanted to live there. They couldn't decide how they were going to decide which one got it and which one bought the other one out. And I don't know where all the discussion went, but my dad told me this story several times, and it was verified by my cousin that his dad had told him the same story. They decided to draw a high card. And that is exactly the way it went. And the story's in that album about how it went, but Dad undoubtedly drew the high card. But it was a little dramatic, and you get into the story, and it's kind of unusual. I always just loved Dad tell me that story, because it was a good story.
The other little bit with it was that when Grandpa won, they wanted to do double or nothing.
Well, Uncle Vern, so I don't know how many of you ever even knew him. He was gone before, when I was young. Divorced. Marie and him had divorced, and he was out of our lives. But he was kind of a gambler and a little bit of a carouser. But when he drew low card, he said, "Let's try that again, double or nothing." And Dad says, "No, I'm not going to do that." And Dad told me that part
What would
too.
the double be?
I don't
Just two
know.
parts?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Pay double or something. I don't know what the double was going to be. But
I see.
So another shot at it, and Grandpa declined.
maybe that did have that in his head, and he thought, "You can pay me double if you win again."
Could have been. You
Could have
never
been.
know.
I don't really know.
So, the house and barns and all the property, is that still there from when you were a kid? Is that still there, Larry?
Most of it.
Most of it?
The house and the barn was there the entire time that we were growing up. The garage, I think it was there the whole time. There's probably not too many other buildings that are there that have been there.
Right.
And several of them are
Toy shed.
destroyed.
Yeah, the toy shed's still there, isn't it?
Yeah, that came, what it was a brooder house at a place that we had, but Dad brought it home and set it up, and then that's where we kept our toys. It was our toy shed,
Right. Yeah.
and it's still there.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's one of the beginning fun things, was to have a toy shed that had dolls and all the equipment to go with dolls and whatever the guys had there. And that's one of the early ways we learned responsibilities, because we'd get our dolls out and put them in buggies or whatever, and then we were to hang the clothes on the line. So we'd have to take care of our dolls while we were getting the clothes hung out. And so that was part of the beginning of our responsibilities of what took place on the farm.
So,
I don't even have any idea what's in that toy shed today, but I remember when Dad passed, or when we were cleaning, Dad was still alive when he said we just need to have an auction and dispose of things. And when we cleaned that shed out, it was full of trunks, magazines, papers, not many toys.
No.
But I just knew we were gonna run into some huge rat nests, mouse nests. Never found a one in there, and the only thing I could ever credit that to is he had some of them little electronic things you plug into an outlet. I can't swear that done it, but you'd have thought it'd have been full of mice, but we never had any.
oh, wow. Were the other kids envious of your toy shed? Did you even show anybody?
Oh, well,
So
yeah,
they
it was
wouldn't
a
come and
good
take your toys.
It was a good-sized building for a
Oh, okay.
brooder house type thing, but there was booths that lived on
Right.
each side, so all of our cousins were close by, we'd either get together at our house for time to play or go to their house. And there was one family that lived, the Marie's family lived in Fairfield. So it was big excitement to go to town and get to go to the neighborhood grocery store to buy candy.
I bet.
Yeah.
Because the farm's not too far out of town
Right.
from here.
Right.
So how did, for schools, what did you all do for schooling back?
Well, we went to the country school, center number 6,
Okay.
which was on Highway 1 North.
The baby didn't.
No.
Well, and she has to tell where all she attended. And I did through 5th grade, and then 6th grade came to Fairfield.
Is that still there, that building?
No.
Okay.
It's the schoolhouse that they moved to the high school and used as a bookstore.
Oh, okay.
So until it was tore down from the high school, that was our school
Oh,
building.
that's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Wow.
We had several different teachers. Mrs. Graber, Evelyn Simmons. Who was some of the other ones?
Grace Graber, did you say Grace?
Yes, yeah.
That's one.
But anyway, it was always interesting to sit and listen to the other classes, be taught their lessons, and we could hear that too.
So you were studying up for when it was your turn? the next
Right,
grade up. I
yes.
see.
We could just whiz through that grade.
And Julaine, where did you go to school then?
So I didn't get to experience the country school, but I did get to experience almost all of the elementaries in town.
Oh, wow.
I started at Lincoln. I went to McIntyre, which was a house transformed into a school. We would walk to Logan School for lunches. I went to Roosevelt and then back to Lincoln. So I never attended Washington
Oh, wow.
schools, but I
Did they keep kicking you out of those schools? Or was that,
yeah, no. I think it was what you call redistricting.
Right.
And since we lived in the country, if the numbers were so, they kept,
they could pretty much
transferring.
consider you town folk living so close to.
Yeah, because my cousin that was my same age, she also made all the different rotations.
I see.
But it was traumatic because you had to catch the bus and
Oh,
a different
okay.
bus, you go to the high school, get on the bus, and then go to the elementary, back to the high school, get on your bus to go home.
Oh, goodness.
That was,
Learning experience, so now
it
you
was.
go to the big city.
But, now it's like, wow, I went to all those schools.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So when you guys went to school in the schoolhouse, how did you get there? Did you have a bus to take you, or did you?
You walked.
It was, you walked,
Up
okay.
Walked and rode a
Both ways.
bicycle.
Bicycles are riding. I suppose in dead winter, maybe somehow if there was school, would get us there. But
I don't remember that they ever didn't have school, to be honest.
Yeah.
I can remember there might have been 1 or 2 days, or maybe 5 days out of the whole year that some of the neighborhood would say, we're gonna take ours, we'll pick you up, and they'd take us by car. But for the most part, we never got transported to the country school. And I was in the country school up through 6th grade, and that's when they actually done the redistricting, and I came into Pence and started in town.
as a junior
When I
high.
met Jerry, I think. No, you were in Libertyville, weren't you? That's right.
So did your mom and dad do other things besides farming, or they just farm? That's 40 acres. I mean, back then, you could probably provide for your family off that, but I don't know.
Dad was a carpenter with
okay.
his dad. And they built many houses around Fairfield, built the First Lutheran Church parsonage.
Oh, wow.
And we always attended First Lutheran Church growing up, get up on Sundays and get to church. And then when his father retired, I think he went to, he sold Watkins Products, Mormon Feed, Central State Steel. So those were the,
Had a lot of side hustles going on.
well, yes, to subsidize the farm income at that time.
Yeah, well, with all the children I had to do something, didn't he?
Right.
Just get out
And
of the house.
he put us to work. That's what he did, was put, yeah.
I heard there was a list for the girls in the family, and and Kenny tells me there was a list for the boys in the family that would never end. So how did that go?
Well, that was the way it worked. Dad, of course, went to work a lot of times before we ever got up, but there was a place that I could still show you in the house where there was a list, it was just ongoing. I mean, you'd cross it off and you got it done, but there'd be more down at the bottom and then they'd start over. And if we could get the list done, then we could go to town and go swimming or, but it never happened, Not unless we cheated a little, maybe crossed it off and didn't have it done or something like that, but.
What all they have on the list for you? I imagine baling hay.
Oh,
Did you have
pulling
cattle?
nails out of boards or building a gate or just cleaning the chicken house out or.
What livestock did you have on the farm?
Basically, we had dairy cows, different numbers at different times, usually some beef cows and hogs and chickens.
Oh, okay.
Didn't really get into the sheep. I had them as an FFA project one time, but that once was enough of that. But no goats that's pretty much. And we got, of course, the eggs. I can remember, and I don't know whether Jelaine can, but when we used to haul cream to town and eggs to town to sell or barter and end up with something else in return.
So where would you take that when you went to do you remember the places you bartered with?
Well, I'm
or-
turned around in here, but there's a parking lot over here by Beaner's, wherever that's at.
Yep,
There used to
it's
be
right
a
over here.
building right there that Andy Harrison ran that they took milk and eggs. And
Oh,
then there was another one, I think, over where Gamreth and Doyle's building used to be that we took stuff like that. You took it to there on Friday night and then went to town and sat on the square and watched people walk by. Or Saturday night, I guess it was. It wasn't Friday night then, but.
Well, that's pretty neat. So what did the girls have to do for chores?
We had to get up and dust and get laundry together and all that. But I remember one of our main chores was we needed to dust and clean the floors before we went to school
Wow.
Daily.
Every day.
daily.
And we lived on a gravel road, so who wouldn't think that was important?
Did you tell your parents just to keep the windows closed once in a while? So you wouldn't have
We
to do
didn't
that?
have air conditioning then.
Oh, I see. Oh, neat. And then you got to go swimming is what somebody's been telling me. The girls got to go swimming a whole lot
Oh,
more.
yes,
Oh, they did
always.
too, all the time.
That's why they're more cultured. Because they got to go to town. What did you get? Did you guys have anything like, were you involved in like 4-H or FFA or things like that growing up? Or
Yes. Mom was actually a 4-H leader,
she was, okay.
so all of us girls were in 4-H, and she started me quite young,
Okay.
going along with,
Yeah.
and sewing and all of that, so,
Well, nice.
yes, we were brought up in the 4-H.
And I've seen Mary Carolyn's 4-H book. It's up in our display up on the third floor and brought back some memories because her husband Marvin was my 4-H leader growing up. So, but did you have any special thing? Did you have to do anything for the fair every year? I know there's special projects you would do. Do you remember any of those or did you do anything for the farm?
To the pie crust.
Oh, yes. Each year you had a different section that you concentrated on back there, like food or home furnishings or
Oh, okay.
clothing. And the year that it was cooking, I took interest in making pie crusts. And so we teamed up together to make this demonstration. And it ended up going from local to, our club practicing, and then the local exhibit. And then the Dairy Cattle Congress in Waterloo.
Oh, wow.
Went up and showed them how to make pie crust.
Oh, that's really
And that
neat.
was a big event, because we got to go to Waterloo,
I bet.
because she took her demonstration there, so.
Oh, wow. How many of you were doing it? Like
It was a team demonstration.
Oh, okay.
And the people were alive now, everyone in mail carriers, the elevator, they got pies because I was practicing
Yeah,
all
all
the
the
time.
And she still makes a good pie crust.
That is so neat to realize that you specialized once, every year or whatever, because I don't remember, when I was in it that we did that.
Right.
So that's very unique, I would think, if people didn't know any better. Did you have something?
And, hey, did you ever show livestock? Because Chris did. Okay.
Yes, you had to be in the separate boys 4-H club
Okay.
and to show your livestock. So
Oh, okay.
we were in 2 clubs.
So what clubs were you in?
4-Leaf Lassies
Okay.
and the Senators.
Oh, okay. Did that turn into the 4-leaf clovers at all? Because I know my sisters ran that, and I was in the Senators, so.
Ours was able to stay the 4-leaf lasses.
Was it? Okay. Very nice. So then, did you do that all through school then, or?
Yes.
Okay. How about you guys? Did you participate in any FFA, 4-H, things like that?
I was in 4-H from the time I was 10.
Oh, that's
which is
right, because you tried to show the lamb or the sheep.
I didn't know, that was FFA.
Oh, okay, okay.
FFA, and I was in 4-H up until I was too old for that, and then I was in FFA in high school.
Gotcha.
My intention was to be a farmer, but that didn't exactly pan out, but, I enjoyed farming, I really did, and I still do, and I own a farm now and live on a farm, and it's about a third
For
dream.
20 years.
Yeah, I've been helping him. I just love to come up and help
You
him.
haven't lost a dime, have you?
That's the way they own the farm, right?
You don't have a nickel in it.
That's
He
right.
always said when he'd help me, I always wanted to farm, now it don't cost me nothing, I just get to help you.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
So when you, back on the farm, did the doctor make house calls back then, or did you just go to town since you were so close to the?
I can remember we did have a house call from even
Really?
Dr. Dunleavy, which probably several in the room know
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Dunleavy. Mom took sick on a Saturday evening and turned out she had appendicitis.
Oh, wow.
In the winter.
Oh,
So,
House calls weren't typical that I can remember.
no, they were not. We
By
went
that
to the
time.
doctor, but I thought that was very nice that he agreed to come and,
Because it was a cold wintry night. that
Yeah.
He came out.
I'd say. Now, I hear you had a bunch of relatives like surrounding you at the time, a lot of the booths and relatives. And did you guys like farm together back in the day, or did you help each other out, or?
Back to the location of where we lived,
Okay.
most of you probably know where the This Old Barn wedding venue is. That is the barn my dad and grandpa and Uncle Bud built, and the house is where my mom was raised. So that's, and then you go down to the T and go back to the west. The second house is where we lived, and then the house just a quarter of a mile away was where my Uncle Carl lived. So we called it Boothville. It never got officially on the map, but yes, we baled hay, made silage, did a lot of things together. And-
Mushroom hunting.
Huh?
Mushroom
Mushroom hunting,
hunting.
that was the ladies.
That was the
The
ladies.
guys never had time.
And we had a great time doing
But,
that.
yeah, that was,
All the
but
units.
I mean, that was what you did back in those days. That didn't matter whether you was a relation or not. Neighbors worked together and done things, and it was a good time. It was a good time. Good food too, always good
I bet.
food.
Now, how did that come out? Did you go to the house, or did it get brought out to you, or?
Some of both.
Some of both.
I can remember Aunt Mabel bringing sandwiches and drinks out to the hayfield, and I can remember going in and sitting around the table at Grandma Booth's. Of course, Grandma Booth, of course, she'd lost her husband when my mom was 7, is when he died. So she lived with Uncle Bud, and that was the arrangement. Of course, that didn't mean she didn't come to our house for a week or maybe go over to Uncle Carl's for a week. She would move around some, but she was always a good cook, and when we went there, we always could count on a really big meal. And
cookies
Yeah,
and pastries.
yeah, it was fun. It was a good life.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Nice. Do you remember anything else about your grandmother on the farm, or?
well, speaking of her coming to the different homes, why she was always a big help when it came to dressing chickens day
Oh,
or
okay.
canning day or all those specific jobs we could do that.
So when Grandma came over, that's when the work got the.
And
The
you'd,
canning
you
and
could
the,
say, how did you get 6 chickens done? I only got 2 done.
And
she
we always knew when Grandma was coming or when she was gonna be there, because we had like maybe a clothes basket, or I don't remember exactly what it was, but if something needed mending, that's where it went till Grandma came. And she would mend, and when she was there and we were going to school, we couldn't wait to get home because we knew there was cinnamon rolls and fresh rolls, and she loved to bake.
Yep.
She did.
Very good memories of the farm life back then, isn't it?
Yep.
Yes, it is.
I know people enjoy talking about the past and things like that, just because it stirs up memories and they can smell the cinnamon rolls
yeah.
probably and things like that. So, I know your like you said, your relatives are out there. Did you have any gatherings, or did the ladies of the area gather, or sewing bees or things like that out in the area? on the
They
farm?
had a neighborhood club that started by around the area of a different country school over on what's the Brookville Road now, or no, Grimes Street. And the ladies started gathering just to do sewing work. And then as it expanded, they made it into an official club that they held twice a month
Oh, wow.
and made things or raised money. They donated like to Red Cross or different things that way. But the women got to having so much fun that the men kind of got interested. So they decided to hold a oyster soup supper, and surprise the ladies. So that's kind of how the guys got involved. So then the women thought, well, we've got to do something as a group. So then they started hosting picnics in the park in the summer.
Oh, wow.
So we'd have big family gatherings then and had a good time.
Did you have any relation from other parts of Iowa or anything coming down, or was it mainly your family there up near the farm?
This is the neighborhood that I remember.
You're right. I think that's right. But it was
Homemade
always,
ice cream.
yeah, for the picnics. And it was always a special day if they were hosting the club meeting. You brought out the spatial doilies and the hand towels and got special dishes that we normally didn't use. Those were all brought out for the
Oh.
club meeting.
So you had to have grandma come over first so she could wash all those.
Right, right.
Get them all clean before you could have your parties at.
And it was interesting. We have a story about the club itself that goes way back. And Grandma was the rebel rouser. She was the first one that was admitted to the original club.
Oh, wow.
So we gave her a little, she was the first one. And then the neighbors that lived closer to her started all joining too.
Oh, okay. Well, nice. I always liked to, my dad would always talk to me about things, where he lived. Do you ever talk to your kids about, some of these things? Or is there anything that your kids ever went out near the farm and you just had a memory that you had to tell them?
Well, probably several memories. But we lived close enough with our boys at their ages.
You drive by it all the time.
Right, but they also went down and did jobs. They had that list that
Oh, did
Kenny's
they?
referring to, only it was for the grandchildren.
Oh, I see. Larry probably got in on that list too, I imagine.
There's grandkids there a lot.
Now, did you guys have, did you have like running water, electricity? Did you have all that by the time you had moved in? By the time your parents had moved into the place, or?
I
Well,
don't remember now.
I was told, I don't remember, but we moved into that house in March of 1947, which ironically made me 1 year old because I was born in March of 1946. So we moved in, and it was a mud road. They moved us by horse and wagon. Of course, I don't remember that, but we was moved by horse and wagon to get in. And the house did have electricity, but it didn't have indoor. I did have an indoor restroom. I remember that part. I don't know that it had indoor water. We had a cistern, and it may have had a pump. I just don't remember altogether whether it had complete plumbing in the house. It came along in stages, I'm sure, but it did have electricity when we moved in there. And it was ironic, as I grew up and went to my career with Iowa Electric, I found out that the electric line out to my Uncle Carl's had been installed and paid for by them farmers along that line in order to get electricity out there.
Oh, wow.
And I found actually paperwork that showed where the farmers deeded it back to the power company just to get them to maintain it. But it was kind of an interesting,
About what year was that?
before me.
Right. Now,
I really don't know that I remember the year. I'm thinking it was in the late 30s.
oh, wow. So it's right cutting edge stuff back
Yeah.
then. So where did it come from? Do you know? Did it come from
Fairfield
itself?
Out
Okay.
of Fairfield.
Okay. Well,
Takes the same route it takes today.
Oh, I bet. I bet. And the telephone, did you guys have, did you have the crank telephone?
Yeah,
Yes,
and then party line,
Oh, so everybody could get on and.
yeah.
and
And
yes,
if you knew they were on, you'd have to say, "This is busy."
Oh, okay.
Like, don't listen in.
and noon every day, you could not be on the phone because Uncle Carl did stocks.
Oh, okay.
And that was his time to use the line, so
Oh, wow.
you knew if it was getting close to noon, you had to hang up.
Was he receiving the stocks from somebody else, or was he
I don't-
telling everybody the stocks, or?
He was just listening and wanted to be able to use the phone line if he needed to call in
Oh,
or
wow.
something.
So they kind of use it like a radio, back, for stock markets and.
But we were always told, couldn't use it during that time.
Yeah, it's amazing the technology we have now.
Right,
You get stocks on your little phone now and everything. What is on the farm now? Is it, Larry, do you have some of your hogs over there, or, because I know you produce you're a hog producer, so.
Just, actually rent the house out and the tenants have some horses and not too many animals.
I see.
Used to have a lot of sheep over there when I was feeding lambs, probably had close to 1,000 there at one time, but got
Wow.
out of that.
Did you have a big barn over there for all those
I had
lambs?
a
or-
couple hoop sheds I was feeding them in the
Oh, no
barn.
kidding.
They were everywhere.
Yeah, as they will be. So, what are the plans for decades from now when you're no longer a farmer? Are the kids looking forward to getting into farming?
You know, one of them, yeah.
That's all it takes to keep the Century Farm going,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
that's
So,
right.
I don't know, we don't know what the future holds. but
right.
It'll probably go into a trust or something and all their names and, I don't know.
Maybe we'll have to draw high cards, a bunch of money. You can just put that in the trust for them, so.
I got some more plans for improvements around there and just see how it goes.
Yeah. Yep. You might be able, well, since you're a suburb now, you'll. So,
Being a suburb probably means it will never become part of that town.
Probably.
I would say Larry will tell you that.
probably. So is there anything else anybody wanted to add about some memories or time over there at the farmstead? I know we're,
One of my memories of the farming and helping out was when they'd pick corn, you used to have to go out and with the pickup truck, pick up the extra ears of corn that didn't go in. And so at the time that we had that assignment, I don't know what Mary Carolyn was doing, but Chris was old enough, she maybe couldn't legally drive, but she could drive because I couldn't reach the pedals. So being as gracious as she was, she said, I'll drive the truck and we can get this done faster if you just throw the corn in the back. So I said, sure.
and being the youngest, you're like, yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, let's get this done.
And that's how stories you start in, because that brought up my memory of another story.
Okay.
that I'm not sure that I know Jelaine wasn't involved, but we earned our first television by going with pickup and picking up ear corn and then taking it to the elevator and selling it. And it was quite a deal because Mom would pick us up at school and we actually rented a farm. It's called the Hennemeister Place. Some people probably know where I'm talking about, but it was over on the Pleasant Plain Blacktop. And that ground was pretty rough, so there was quite a bit of corn on the ground. But Mom would take us over there and we'd pick up corn. And then, I think we'd go over and feed silage. We had a silo over there. We'd feed cattle silage, and then we'd pick up corn, bring it back home and sell it. We'd done that one whole fall, and I still can see my dad walking in and saying, there wasn't enough. Just didn't have enough. And we believed him. One Saturday, here come Crandall TV pulling in with the television and an antenna. And the funny part of this is, my older brother is 3 years older than me. He got so excited he got sick and couldn't watch television that night. That's a true story.
Oh, my goodness.
Was you,
I remember it.
do you? Of course, all that was on was Lawrence Welk, so
And you can listen to that on the radio. Wow, that's amazing, a whole fall of picking up
ear
corn.
corn.
And just
I
to
have no
get a
idea how
TV.
many dollars we got out of it or how much the first TV cost. Of course, it was black and white, I know.
Yeah.
But previous to that, we would go down to Teeters, Bernard and Isabel Teeters, and they had a TV, but they didn't want anybody to know they had it, so the antenna was in the attic. Trust me, that's the truth.
I remember
And
that.
it just snows. I mean, you can go down there and watch snow, but you go down on Saturday night to watch TV at their house, and it wasn't much to watch, but they had the antenna. in
But you
the
could hear it?
Oh,
Hear
yeah.
what was going on? Wow. That's amazing. So, did you remember, have anything you wanted to add, Mary Carolyn, or? How about, Larry, did you live on that farm growing up?
No.
Okay,
Actually,
You visited it a lot.
okay.
You visited it a lot.
Yeah, I could talk for hours about memories.
You got one that pops out real quick, or we're about ready to wrap it
If
up?
I get started, we'll be here.
I'd like to say that even though the girls had assignments in the house, we also learned how to operate the equipment and do the farming.
Yep.
And Dad would send us to certain fields to say, cultivate or
Oh, okay.
rotary hoe, and then he'd come to see if you were doing it. And that rotary hoeing thing, I couldn't get that pictured, how to drive, where to drive. So I just kind of waited after I started, because I thought, this isn't right. He comes up and he gets me straightened out, and he says, you would have been driving on every row of beans there was. So I think that I learned my lesson on that one.
Well, that's good, yeah. At least you didn't have fences you had to drive through or anything,
Right,
so you're
right.
good on that.
Backing up a little bit, and when you talked about 40 acres and surviving on that, we actually owned the farm that is now Vedic City, 200 acres of it.
Oh, okay,
So we had another farm, it just wasn't our home place.
gotcha. It wasn't the Century Farm.
That's
part of it,
correct.
Yeah,
That's
gotcha. So,
correct.
and 40 acres was a pretty big chunk back, when
Oh,
in
yeah.
1844, and so it's wonderful we can keep that in the family and keep things going like that, and then be able to have presentations like this and bring back some memories. So I think we're about ready to wrap things up. Want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Ken wanted to make sure we thank Patsy for helping with the genealogy and all that. She did a whole upstairs. If everybody can go up to the third floor, you're more than welcome to. There's an elevator, and there's a nice display up there, and it shows different little things on the family farm and some history and things like that. So, and we invite you to come back to the museum sometime when we're open, and just come and look around and see what we got, because we got a lot of things going on here. I want to thank the Fairfield Media Center for coming in and videotaping this for us. So you can find us, we're on social media. I know everybody's into that now. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and that's where this will be. And if you just type in Carnegie Museum Fairfield, then it will pop up, and you'll be able to find this online. Ken was asking me earlier if he gets royalties from it. I don't think we're doing that yet. But
Never hurts to
I
ask.
tell you what, if you like and subscribe on YouTube, maybe someday we'll be able to come back and offer him a check. So I just want to thank everybody again, and have a great evening.
Thank you.